Hello everybody, and thank you for joining me. This is Ciara from Ciara T Designs, and today I have this really fun mixed media pumpkin slimline card to share with you. So let's jump right in. So as usual, I do like to cut down my cardstock. I just think it's nice to know what I'm working with, so I kind of always start here. And I cut down a slimline card base, which is 7 by 8.5 inches. And then when I score it, it will be 3.5 by 8.5, and that's the base that I like to work with. And then for the black mat, I cut both that and my watercolor cardstock down to originally 3 inches. So that I guess it would actually be 3.5. It would be the full size of the base because I knew I was going to bring in my Deckled edge trimmer and kind of trim it down a bit. Now this, honestly, I have to eyeball a little bit because the length, of course, goes off of the trimmer. So I don't know exactly what I'm cutting it to, but I aim for my mat to be about 1/8 of an inch smaller than my base. And then I aim for this panel to be about 1/4 of an inch smaller than the base. So that's how I like to work with my layers. But honestly, because I'm using the Deckled edge trimmer and I can't see my length, I'm kind of have to eyeball a bit of that, but I don't mind. I have no problem with that. If you want a more exact cut, there are, I believe, slimline dies out there somewhat similar to the Deckled edge trimmer. I don't own any. I own the trimmer, so it makes more sense to me to just use that. And then here you're going to see I'm going to score my slimline base, and it is supposed to be at the 3-inch mark, but that arrow always throws me off on this mini, this is like the Score Pal, I think, the Score Buddy from the Score Pal. And it has this arrow at like the 3 3/4, I think. So it throws me off because I started with the arrow and then I corrected myself and went for the 3.5 mark. So there's going to be a funny line on my card base, but it doesn't matter. You're not going to see it in the end. So it's all good. Now I really wanted to mask these pumpkins. I didn't want to cut them out, although you could. They're not difficult to fussy cut. At least I don't think so. I fussy cut quite a bit. And so I was kind of lining them up where I knew one would be in the front, one would be in the back, that kind of thing, because I am going to mask them, which is what you see me doing here. So I've stamped my first pumpkin out, and then I brought in a mask so that I could mask that pumpkin. But I am also lining them up, trying to see where I want them to be. So anybody who's sitting on top of another pumpkin, that's actually going to be in the front. That's why it needs to be masked. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. So here, excuse me, I'm going to mask these other 2 pumpkins as well. So I'm going to have 3 masks altogether. There will be 6 pumpkins on the front of the card. As you guys know, I don't generally work in uneven numbers, but 6 fit best. So that is what I went for here. And then I'm going to put 1 on the inside so that there is actually 7 pumpkins with this card. It's just there's only 3 on the front. So here you can see I've kind of lined up my pumpkins. I'm going to leave my base, or I guess this is the panel, in my Misti because I am going to keep stamping. So I'm just going to cut out my masks first. I like to cut right on the line of a mask. I kind of left the black stuff on the bottom, like the pumpkins have shadows drawn in, and that's great. I left those unmasked because it didn't really matter if I stamped over top of the shadow because the pumpkin itself would be masked and that would just add more shadow to the bottom of it. So I really wasn't concerned about that. I am just going to cut the actual pumpkins, and just these 3 are going to be masked. And then I actually just stick them on the stamp packaging and I keep them in case I want to use them at a later date because I didn't do any blending or anything on top of them. This is just for stamping. So they actually held up really well. So I'm just going to, and I did cut out the little stem as well, just in case. I didn't cut the little curly Q stem on this pumpkin here. I just cut the actual stem itself. So I'm going to draw that curly Q back in because we do lose it a little later. Oh, and I did stamp everything in a waterproof ink, and I am using watercolor paper because we're planning on watercoloring. So that is why specifically I use the distress watercolor paper and a waterproof ink. But I did find that I lost just a touch of the definition to the pumpkin, so I just drew it back in later because I don't mind kind of drawing. That's fine by me. So here's where you see I'm going to line up my stamps again and I'm going to stamp them down, and because those masks are in the way, they will keep those pumpkins in the foreground. So you have to stamp whatever you want in the front and mask it first, and then you stamp whatever you want behind. So this is where I'm kind of doing that. And I am going to stamp them twice just because I wanted a good impression. So they end up being just a touch darker than my original pumpkins, but that doesn't really matter because again, we're going to watercolor them. And I am going to go back in with a black pen later and just add back in some of the detail if needed. So I wasn't concerned about that. And I am going to use the Tim Holtz watercolor pencils for this. I like the method where I bring a water brush to the pencil and then I add the color that way. I mean, there are so many ways you can use these, and Tim Holtz has some amazing videos using them, so as do a bunch of other creators. So if you don't like my method, by all means go and check out some other ways to do this, but I don't think there's any wrong way. And now I have my pencils organized in color family. So this is not how they come when you buy them. So I'm just going to list all of the sets of pencils because I don't remember. I know what pencils I used, but I don't remember what set specifically they come from. I am a bit of a set completionist, so I tend to like to own all of them. So, and I just, like I said, I have them now. I have them organized in color family, so I can just easily grab them and use them. So I don't know exactly what set anything is from. So for the colors, I used carved pumpkin, of course, rusty hinge, dried marigold, fossilized amber, tattered rose, crushed olive, and Victorian velvet. Those are the ones that I used specifically on the pumpkins. And now I know that these are not traditional colors for pumpkins other than like carved pumpkin, but it's my card and it's for like Halloween. So I figured it was fine to use whatever color I decided would look cool. And that's kind of what I ended up doing. For the background, you're going to see me color it a little later. And for it, I went in with salvaged patina and peacock feathers. And I kind of did a watercolor wash of the background. You'll see it here in a minute once all the pumpkins are painted, but those are specifically the colors that I used. And then for the bottom of like underneath the pumpkins, I used Villainous Potion because I wanted purple and blue. Because why not? You guys know I love purple if you've been with me for a little while. And I used also Scorched Timber just to add a little shading on some of the pumpkins because I wasn't, like the one with Tattered Rose, which is the one on the far right currently, it's not very defined. So I do go in, you'll see me later, add some shadows and shading with the Scorched Timber on a few different pumpkins just to add a little more definition. So that's kind of how I did the definition for them. Now I'm going to be honest with you guys. I had no idea where this card was going. I knew that I wanted to watercolor some pumpkins. I knew that I, wanted to use multiple of these pumpkins because they're freaking adorable. This is an old stamp set, by the way. It's called PumpkinHead stamps. It is a Tim Holtz stamp set, but it came out a while ago, I believe. And I only just got it. I just got my hands on it and I had to use it for this kind of Spooktember season. And I kind of knew I wanted it to be a mixed media card, but I wasn't totally sure how I wanted to get there. So honestly, a lot of this card is just me playing with products. I hope you guys enjoy the final result of this card. If you enjoyed it, please let me know because I honestly wasn't sure. I walked away from this card halfway through because I wasn't sure what the heck I was doing. Not at this point. This point was fine. I think it was after I added the paste that I was kind of like, what am I doing? And I had to walk away from it. And that's really rare for me. Generally, when I sit down to create, I have an idea of what I'm trying to create, and sometimes I get there and sometimes I don't. It totally depends on how the card comes together. But with this card, all I knew is that I wanted a pumpkin slimline card with some watercoloring. And now, out of fairness, I didn't have to make it mixed media. I could have stopped after all the color was added, because here you see I'm working on the background, and this is salvaged patina. And then I'm going to bring in peacock feathers right after to kind of just add a little more interest into the background. It's not quite as green. It gets a little bit more blue. And there's nothing wrong with this, there's like at all, but sometimes I try to push my creativity, and mixed media is something that I love, and I just wanted to try something a little bit different. So this is what I came up with, and I hope you guys think it's kind of neat. If you don't like it, that's okay too. Let me know and tell me what you don't like about it, if there's a reason. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with this. And like I said, you could stop after the color was added and this would still be a great card. This is honestly just because I wanted just to add a little bit more, and sometimes I struggle to stop. So I am a more is more style creator. That's just kind of how I do. And it's not done until I've added everything in the kitchen sink. So that is a difficulty that I have. So that is kind of what was going on for me. So here you see I've done kind of the background, and now I'm going to do the color that's underneath the pumpkins. And I chose a really dark purple because when you watercolor, it lightens the colors. So you could, of course, have used wilted violet or a shaded lilac here instead, but it would be so light that you'd end up having to add a lot more color than I needed to kind of get that same look. And of course, Mist had to come and inspect my watercoloring. She sat there for a few minutes watching and then she left. So you guys can't see her. She's off to the left-hand side there. And then this is where I brought in Scorched Timber and just darkened up a little bit of the shadows, especially on this Tattered Rose pumpkin, just because it is quite light. And I just wanted it to have a little bit more interest to it. And there, again, you could have not done this. If you don't like what this does to the pumpkin, don't add this part. It kind of ended up grunging up the pumpkins a little bit, which again isn't a bad thing. It's just not something I tend to do. So there was a lot of experimentation in this card for me, and I'm still not sure if I really like the card or not. No, I think I like the card. When I look at the card, I enjoy it. So I must like the card, but this is just so different from what I usually create that I guess I have to kind of look at it for a minute and be like, hey, you made that. Like, this is so different. So right here, I know that the crushed olive and the dried marigold are kind of similar. Sorry, no, it's the crushed olive and the fossilized amber on those two yellow colored pumpkins. If you see it close up, they aren't as similar as they look right now, but they are a bit close in color. So I kind of wish I had spread them out a little bit more and done crushed olive on a further pumpkin away, so that you didn't have kind of two orange pumpkins, two yellow pumpkins, and then two pinkish pumpkins kind of together. But that's one of those things. It was the choice I made at the time, and that's okay. So I brought in a stencil. This is I believe it's the Speckles stencil. Speckles, yeah. And I brought in the black texture paste. And I just added some across the panel because I thought, why not? And then this poor pumpkin, he gets it all over his face, and that's my bad. But I feel like he looks like he's kind of upset about it anyway, so it kind of fit. Like, his facial expression's just so cute. So I feel like he's just kind of sad because he ended up with some speckles on his face. And that's okay. And then I really wanted to just add a bit of grunge. I don't know if grunge is the right word. Deckled texture. You know, I notched out my panel and I kind of created this like rip tear effect just because I wanted it to feel like it was a bit aged, a bit old, a bit, that's what I was doing here. So again, like I said, I didn't really have a plan for this card. I looked at it and was like, you know what, this could benefit from whatever, right? So in this case, it was me ripping some pieces. And then I'm like, well, we lost a bunch of the definition in the pumpkin. So I'm going to go in with my, this is a Copic Multiliner. And I went in with my Copic Multiliner and I added black sketchy lines to areas of the pumpkins because we had lost some of the detail. And then once I'm done with the black detail, I'm going to go in with a white gel pen and add some highlights and interest. Just because, again, like I said before, I am a more is more style creator and I don't always know when to stop. So I am going to go in and just add these fun little details just because why not, right? So this is where I'm bringing in that white gel pen. And honestly, there's no rhyme or reason to this. I went in and I added it to the eyes. I added slightly sketchy lines to the top of the pumpkins. I added it to the teeth if they were showing just because it seemed kind of fun. But there's no real rhyme or reason as to where the white gel pen kind of goes. And if you see me kind of drawing it on my thumb, that's because every once in a while, because this is a very textured paper to start with, and then I've got all this watercolor and paste on it, the pen wants to skip. So if I kind of draw on my thumb a little bit with it every once in a while, it kind of gets the ink flowing again. And then I have no issues getting the ink to go down. So that's kind of why you'll see me doing that. And then I really wanted to add a sentiment. Now in this stamp set with the pumpkin heads, there are actually a few sentiments. So that's what I'm going to take and do the sentiment with. Oh, and I also added a little bit of Spritz because why the heck not? And you can't even see it until I tip it in the light, which I think is really fun about these Spritz. But I did bring in, I believe, weathered wood because it was kind of a silvery color and that's what I wanted. And then I stamped out Happy Halloween and I am going to white heat emboss it on a black piece of cardstock just because why not? You could do this the opposite, do black heat embossing on a white piece of cardstock and bring a little more white into the design, but I kind of like the idea of some black. And then this is where I'm not sure how to stop. I think I decided to bring in a couple of different stamps and just add a little interest to the background. These, I believe, are the Tim Holtz Field Notes stamps, and I just brought in like one that's kind of a rectangle and one that's a circle, and I'm going to add them for subtle texture in the background. You can see that I'm stamping them off on my glass mat before I stamp them onto my card base or my card panel, and that's honestly because I didn't want first generation stamping because it'd be too bright, and because my glass mat is glass and it's super easy to clean with a water based ink. So I wasn't concerned about just wiping the mat off when I was finished. So that is something else I did. But again, not a necessary step. I was just going with this card, and now I'm going to add white splatters. Like, this is what I mean when I said I wanted to add everything and the kitchen sink, because I just kept going and I had so much fun with it. It was a pretty freeing card just because there's just so much going on. I did have a little bit of the ink kind of splatter off on that first pumpkin. That's not a big deal. I just grabbed a piece of paper towel and I just blotted that off. And when it dries, you can't see it. So I'm not really worried about it. You can see it a little bit. Like, you guys will notice now that you've seen that it's there. But like, if you're just looking at the card, that's not what you even notice first. So I'm not worried about it there. And then, yeah, I just started to adhere all of my layers so that they were flat on the card. You could, of course, add dimension if you wanted to, but I kind of felt like there was already a lot going on here. So I was happy to just kind of adhere it down and be content with how the card came together. And of course, because it is me, I did bring in some pearls. Now this again is not a necessary step. However, I so rarely get to use these chocolate pearls that I just so badly wanted to bring them in on a project, and I thought they would look kind of fun here. So I did bring in just a few different, they're like a dark brown pearl. They're really pretty, but I don't get to use them very often. So I felt like this was like a perfect instance in where I could use them and they would fit in beautifully. And I don't know. I love pearls. I love bling. So I had a lot of fun with that. So you did see me stamp in that extra pumpkin on the inside. So hopefully this kind of was a fun project to watch. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you'll leave me a like, leave me a comment, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. The channel is growing and that's incredibly exciting for me. So I would love to have you a part of the creative community here if you want to be. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. This is I have a couple more videos in Spooktember, and then October 7th, we start the 12 Weeks of Christmas series. So make sure you come back if you're interested in that. I do new videos every Monday and Thursdays. We added some live streams. We've got lots going on, so come back and check it out if you're interested. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.